I wanted to share with you, Ernest Holmes wrote, "The power of the word. Be specific in treating. Be definite and direct in your mental work. You're dealing with intelligence, so deal with it intelligently. The treatment must realize the patient is perfect, must recognize the word as power, and must know that it breaks down every human-made law and casts it out. That is the law of harmony and the recognition of the presence of good. That within itself it is unbounded and equipped with the power to execute itself, and it must know that it does this. It must know that there is nothing that can change it, that there is no belief that can hinder it, that it cannot be reversed, mislaid, misplaced, neutralized, or destroyed by any opposing force, but that it does the thing that it is supposed to do." The universe says yes. So, going back in time just a little ways, well, a long ways, frankly, to the the early 1990s, when I first discovered this teaching, the science of mind. What a day that was. There's something that happened when I first entered a Center for Spiritual Living. And what happened was like an awakening. I discovered love. Not the energy that we share with each other in moments of passion, but rather the divine energy of the universe fulfilling itself through me. And wow, what a revelation that was. It was profound, it was brilliant, it was remarkable. So here we are. Now, this is more than 25 years later, if you can count. So when I first went into, don't mind my nose here, when I first went into this teaching, when I first found this teaching, I knew I wanted to take classes. And so I started taking classes. Thanks to Reverend Sharon Mitchell. Yes, our beloved Reverend Sharon. Yeah, she actually met me by chance. I was selling a house and she came to look at it because a friend of ours had suggested it. And, well, she didn't buy the house. But because I was in the process of selling the house, I really didn't have the funds to take the class. And she asked me as she was leaving my home, saying, "No, I can't buy it, but nice house." And then she asked me if I was going to sign up for class. And I said, "Well, I was thinking about it, but money's tight." And she said, "Sign up for class. I got you." So she paid for that first class and she paid for the second one as well. The journey to here took me quite a long time, frankly. It took me 7 years from that moment. But here's what's interesting. My first day of Science of Mind 100, which is what it was called back then, that very first class, I'm talking to my minister and I said, "I'm going to become a minister." And she went, "Mm-hmm." Well, she said, "You better get ready to start a church for yourself or a center for yourself because no one's going to hire you straight out of school." I was like, "Okay, fine." I looked at her and I said, "Fine. There's no Science Mind Center in Toronto, so I'll go start one there." And she just smiled at me. Now, I'm sure she'd had a lot of students over the years suggesting that they would do this very thing. And of course, maybe very few did. So I understand why she was doubting. Well, after 5 years of training, passing my final exams and ready to begin ministry, somehow it just wasn't lining up. I didn't know why or how. I mean, I'd been treating. I was clear. I'm going to Toronto. I'm starting a center in Toronto. You can ask anybody who went to school with me, man. I talked about it all the time. I was clear. I was coming to Toronto to start a center. Well, come October, I graduated in July, and come October, I still wasn't in Toronto. I'm kind of scratching my head going, so what's going on? So I'm out dancing one night because that's what I like to do with my girls. We'd go out and we would dance and we'd have a nice time and drink lots of water and dance lots and have fun. And I came home and I checked my voicemail. And on there was another friend, the one who had actually introduced Sharon and I. And she said, "Why didn't you candidate for the Vernon Center, Vernon, British Columbia?" Well, the interesting thing was I couldn't remember why. So I said, "Oh, well, I'll do that." So the next morning, got up bright and early, called the Vernon Center and said I'd like to candidate. And they said, "Great. We just had somebody step down who was supposed to come in the first week of our candidating process, and so we'll put you in that slot." I said, "Excellent." Well, the person who stepped down was another student in Calgary who felt that it's probably more likely my place than his. And I was like, "Oh, awesome." So I went that first week and I did, all the things we do in a candidating weekend. I led a workshop, I did a Sunday service, I met with the board, and, we had a gathering with the congregation. It was wonderful. And when I left there, I said to Reverend Sharon and to anybody else who would listen, they're voting on December the 13th, and I'm moving to Vernon on December the 15th to start my ministry there. Now, not everybody was quite as confident as I was. Now, I did not give up my dream of Toronto. I just somehow knew this was my next step. So I gave notice where I lived for December 15th, which was a Tuesday. And I gave notice in my real estate office. I worked with a team of realtors. And I said my last day of work will be December the 11th, whatever the Friday was. And they were like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Like, you sure you don't want to wait until after they vote?" And I said, no, because I'm moving December 15th to Vernon. And they're like, "Oh, okay." No, I don't think anybody really believed me. Maybe Sharon did, but I'm sure a lot of people did not. So I did my candidating, came back and waited. Well, the morning of the vote, I was, okay, just a smidge anxious, more than a smidge. Anyway, Sharon came over to spend some time with me as I'm waiting for the phone to ring. Now, between Alberta and BC, there's a 1 hour time difference. So although their service started at 11, that meant it didn't end until close to 1, and I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. Sharon comes over, and seems to me she brought a bottle of wine for us to crack once the deliberations were done. Anyway, just shortly after 1 o'clock, my phone rings, and the board president is singing "Happy First Day," and I landed that position. So on the Tuesday, I flew to Vernon and started my ministry the very next day, December 16th, on my 42nd birthday. And the little group of singers that were at the Vernon Center, they stood up to sing "Happy First Day, Happy Birthday." So it was really exciting and it was wonderful. And I was there for, I didn't know how long, but I was there and I was happy to be there. And so I'm doing my work and doing my thing. And 1 year and 3 months later, I'm in Long Beach, California for a conference. And the first night of the conference, I'm in the hotel room and I'm just got there. My roommate was, hanging out in her bed reading, and she says, "I've just got 3 pages left, so just give me a minute." So she's reading. So I crawl onto my bed and open up my journal, and whoosh, this energy felt like a freight train running through me that was so powerful. And what came out on the page was, "It's time to go to Toronto." I burst into tears. My roommate put her book down and went, What? I said, I'm going to Toronto. And she was like all excited for me. And so began the journey. So a couple days later, well, actually the very next day, I'm in a meditation, a visioning session at the conference. And that morning in my visioning, I saw something very, very clear. I saw a vast body of water. I saw jut out of land, these tall smokestacks on that land. And I wonder what that is. But it seemed pretty relevant to my vision of coming to Toronto. Well, a few days later, my friend who I was rooming with said, I'm going to go with you. So the two of us came here, Reverend Connie Phelps and myself, Reverend Barbara Jean, and the two of us got here. And well, I came first. I got here first. And I arrived. Now, I flew here with a one-way plane ticket to Hamilton because WestJet did not yet fly into Toronto. I had 2 suitcases of summer clothing. Big dream. And that $40 in my pocket, well, that wouldn't last me too darn long in Toronto. A girlfriend of mine picked me up. She now lives in Calgary again, but at the time she was in Oakville. She picked me up, brought me to her place. I spent the night at her place, and the next morning she drove me to Toronto. I met Connie here, and we stayed at a friend of hers place, right on Queen Street in the beach. Well, isn't it interesting that I go for a run every morning along the boardwalk in the beach? And what is the first thing I see when I start running west? That vision I had had at that visioning session that morning in Long Beach, California. Whew, it stopped me dead in my tracks. I thought, wow, I'm obviously in the right place. So Connie and I, we made phone calls, and there'd been, somebody who was running a Science of Mind study group and been kind of going for years and years and years, and had never really amounted to a lot, but they'd get together and they'd talk about the Science Mind. So I got that list from the woman who'd been leading it, and we called everybody whose name we could actually read and phone numbers we could read, and we created this beginning. And then we started looking for a place. Now, Connie started looking for a house first because she had her kids coming as well. But we started with this big dream. Now, my dream of being here never once wavered. Even while I was in Vernon, I knew the day would come that I was leaving there and coming to Toronto. Our very first service was on September 10th, 2000. We'd found a location at the Bloor Cinema. It's where Pierre and I got married, actually, right after Sunday service. So we came here and we were doing our thing. First day, September 10th, we're at the Bloor Cinema. Popcorn's popping. We've got popcorn bags with our name on them, and we handed out popcorn to everybody. Now, some people were a little offended by that, but we thought it was pretty funny. The interesting thing is that there was this energy. 35 people showed up that day. Now, we'd written a check for the rent, even though we didn't have any income yet. Fortunately, enough people donated that we were able to pay the rent that day. And we did this week after week after week after week. We would alternate who would speak. And we did that for a year and a half. And then Connie went on to Winnipeg, then on to British Columbia. She went to Kamloops, started a center there. And then she went to Kenya. Yes, Kenya. And she started a center there that is very successful and is still very successful even all these years after her passing. When we have a dream and when we speak the word and when we hold that dream close and we believe it with every ounce of our breath, like Ernest Holmes said, be specific and be definite and direct in your mental work. Yes, be specific, be definite, and direct in your mental work. You're dealing with intelligence, so deal with it intelligently. Every day, for more than 30 years, I've imagined living here in Toronto. And I got to say, I love it as much today as I did back then when I first came. I didn't know much about Toronto when I arrived here, but I grew to love it almost immediately. Maybe immediately. I really liked it here. What I'm suggesting is that there's a power in our word, and so it's very important how we use it. Are we using it to worry and to fret? Are we using it to go, what if, what if? Are we using it to belittle ourselves or someone else? How are we using our word? And when we use our word and we know that the universe says yes, are we happy with how we're using it and knowing that the yes is coming? Yeah. So this week, as you celebrate with us this incredible milestone, as you journey along with us on this journey, I invite you to really pay attention. Think about the words you use and the way you speak to yourself and to others. And choose love. Choose the vibration of love, the harmonizing energy of the universe. Choose that as your basic place. Use that as your powerful jumping off spot. And just watch what the universe says yes to. Yes is just the beginning.